Egypt is one of the oldest agricultural economies in the world. The ancient Greeks described it as the gift of the Nile, whose flooding each year provided 2 rich harvests. Egyptian wheat fed the pharaohs and was used by the Roman state to supply the free bread which kept their citizens loyal. But today Egypt imports 50% of its wheat, and the rural economy that once sustained much of the population now only employs a third. Many of the people that leave these communities end up in Cairo. Gamal's life is typical. A rural migrant, he came to the city to escape the poverty of Upper Egypt. In Cairo, at least, he can support his wife and 5 children. He rents a small corner of a yard where he prepares thermos, a type of bean which, although poisonous in its natural form, is a popular Cairo street snack. Each day, Gamal soaks the beans in brine to remove the toxins before cooking them slowly to ensure they retain their subtle yet distinct flavor. Thermos is not as popular as it once was. Perhaps because it is a little luxury that many of the hard-pressed workers choose now to do without. To continue to make the $4 a day he needs to support his family, he has had to wheel his cart further and work later. When you're walking the streets of Cairo, one day is much the same as another, and Gamal has long since lost track of when he started his job.
I started selling thermos in 1982 or 1985, something like that. I wake up early in the mornings at about 8 o'clock. I start boiling the thermos, then preparing the carriage to leave the house at about 1 o'clock in the afternoon. I come here and I keep selling till 2 a.m. Then I go home and sleep.
Nothing has really changed except the price. Like other street vendors, he says that inflation is driving away his customers.
In the old days, we used to buy the thermos for £1. Today, it costs £6. It has all changed. The prices have changed. Everything has become more expensive. There aren't a lot of people left here who sell the thermos because not a lot of people buy it like they used to in the old days. It just has become too expensive.
But the rise in prices have had a positive effect for some. Zuba took a loan from the foundation run by the president's wife, Suzanne Mubarak, and turned her front room into a bakery. She now produces loaves for her neighbors, better quality and cheaper, she says, than the local bakeries.
Life is really expensive, so I work to feed my children. We went through some hard times, and so I decided to work on my own project. At the time, Suzanne Mubarak was giving out loans to help those in need, and I applied. I sell 4 pieces for £1 Egyptian pound. A local bakery asked me if I could sell 5 of them for £1 Egyptian pound and make them smaller, but I said no. I would rather sell my neighbors and friends an honest loaf of bread. And thanks be to God, I have many customers.
For Zuba, Egypt's economic difficulties are less important than the country's achievements, especially for women.
طبعاً في فرق في حاجة واحدة. زمان كان مثلا الحاجة رخيصة بس اللي كان قرش قليل.
There is one difference. In the old days, things used to be much cheaper. However, incomes were lower too. Times have changed. Our president has achieved great things. Today, the daughter of a poor man dresses like that of a rich one, and women now have jobs. I agree that prices are higher, but our country has also changed for the better too.
Despite Zuba's flourishing business, the current rise in prices are for most an additional burden. In the countryside, farmers find themselves struggling to grow the crops the country needs. Egypt may once have been the gift of the Nile, but the river's generosity has its limits, and water is increasingly an issue. Many farmers are abandoning the modern petrol-fed pumps in favor of more traditional methods. The oxen are cheaper to run, but the old wheels are also more effective as the water level drops. Mahmoud Al-Asqalani, founder of Citizens Against Price Rises, sees the water issue as another example of bad organization.
Behind us is the Nile, yet we have water shortage. While countries like Saudi Arabia, which do not have the same water sources we have, are self-sufficient in wheat production. Even worse, Saudi Arabia actually sent us wheat to try and help us solve the crisis in Egypt.
But for Dr. Goma, no one is to blame. The problem is, he points out, a physical one. To produce more wheat, Egypt needs to irrigate more land. But to irrigate more land, it needs more water, and there is no more water, as it already uses the maximum amount under the Nile Basin Agreement with neighboring Sudan.
The Nile water is limited, so our abilities to expand and cultivate land are also limited. For Egypt to be self-sufficient in bread production, we need to have 5 million acres of land to grow wheat alone. And at the moment, unless we cultivate new land, we can only use 3 million acres.
With its current population, Egypt can never again be self-sufficient in bread. Dr. Goma believes the solution is simple: maize, a crop which produces almost twice the yield of wheat.
We will start to produce corn loaves soon, which are very similar to what is known in America, Latin America and Mexico as nachos, tortillas and tacos. This should fill any shortage in bread production.
This would involve a leap of faith for the Egyptian people, historically suspicious of any meddling with their beloved bread. But if Egyptians are to resolve this issue, they may have no choice but to accept a new sort of street food. With the population predicted to double by 2050, street vendors like these could soon find themselves selling kusheri nachos and full tortillas, a strange mix, but one which may well be the answer to the country's food problems.